Alrighty, so today is July the 18th, and it's time for another Get to Know Music Person, local music person in Camrose area. Today I'm hanging out with Tova Olson. Hey Tova, how's it going?
Good.
Good, I have your sound on, that's perfect. Sometimes I forget to do that. And so this is just, if anyone, this is the first time we have a few people watching, this is just kind of discuss musical background of some musical people in the area. So, Tova plays, I mean, the funniest thing is I did a Google search just because I do research, and your name, you have a lot of stuff out there. As much as you're like, I'm building a website, that's about all I have, you don't, and you're getting mad at it. You have a lot of stuff out there. So it's, you're involved with like the Kokopelli Choirs, you're involved at Messiah Lutheran Church, you're involved, you do like composing and arranging. You used to be involved with like About Time Productions too, right? Yeah. And so there's a lot we're going to talk about today. So if you are in chat, you can, I'll be watching for any questions you might have for Tova. Otherwise, we're just going to get right into it. So Tova, how long have you been playing music?
Pretty much since I was in the womb.
Well then, that's been the live stream today. I'm just going to shut this down. But so it's like pretty much right out the gate you just started.
Yeah. My parents met on a singing team.
Yeah.
And so we we were exposed to music right from like day one.
Yeah.
Or whichever you call day one.
Well, yeah. I'm not going to dig that one any further than that. And so it was just because you're what group were they part of? Because I know they were, you guys, even when you were kids, you guys traveled around too, right? So what group was that?
Oh yeah. We were called the Lord's Lambs.
Okay.
And so when you were born, you got held. Dad would hold while Mom would play, and they would sing. And then when you were old enough to stand, then you stood, and the next one was in the arms, and you got a solo, and you just like I grew up on stage.
Yeah. And so it was you, your mom. How many sisters do you have?
2.
I know how many, but people have to know these things. I'm going to be, because I know, because you're like, we're different in age, and like we were just, I know of you, and like, but it just was never, this is like, I think some of the first conversations we have are like, just like back in October when we went to like Boston Pizza with like Bob Bailey and Tom Spiel before a gig for the big band, or the pre-stream thing. So these are conversations I haven't had. So I know stuff, but I'd rather hear it firsthand. And so some of these questions are going to be firsthand questions. Yeah. Okay. So that, and then you got did you start out with any instruments right away?
Singing.
Singing was, yeah.
But I have pictures of me playing the piano, like as soon as I could sit up.
Okay.
Kind of thing. I was drawn to the piano.
So you knew where middle C was since you were like,
yeah. Well, I didn't start taking formal lessons until grade 3.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was that obnoxious child that kept banging on everything.
Oh.
And I should have been put in drums right away, but I had stuck in my head that I should play flute like my cousin. And so I started on flute and quickly got bored of it.
Well, you played flute though, like high school kind of thing, like all the way. That was the band thing, yeah.
Yes.
Fair enough. Yeah, that was me in saxophone. I did it for the grade 6 to grade 12, and it's like, okay, that's it. I'm done.
Yeah.
So, fair enough. And so drums, you play, like you studied hand drumming, right? Like specifically djembe, or was it?
Yes.
Okay.
It was Afro-Cuban drumming.
Nice. Yeah.
But in university, but after that it was more African influenced than Cuban influenced, because Kokopelli has a strong connection with sister choirs in the southern part of Africa.
Right.
And the southern part of Africa is all about 4-part choral singing with some drums behind.
Okay.
Versus Western Africa, which is more about the drums and maybe a singer wailing over top.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I've been to Africa 3 times working with choirs over there, and so a lot of my drumming, the djembe drumming, is more African influence now than.
Okay. I mean, as a more of a set drummer, like Afro-Cuban stuff is just interesting. It's always, I mean, drum set players are posers with that, where they just try to make it sound like some of those rhythms, but it's more about, the actual authentic hand drums. And yeah.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever
The more
get,
layers you can do, the better.
yeah. Did you ever get into drum set or anything like that?
A little bit. I would have liked to more, but like typical high school drummers, the guys wouldn't let the girls on the drums. We got relegated to timpani because I could tune them, and all of the mallet instruments because I
Yep.
could read music. So,
Yeah. I really want, I'm looking at investing in a few mallet type instruments just so people can, some of my percussion drummers and stuff know how to do that, because man, it's important.
it totally is. Yeah.
Everybody just wants to play drums, but I've had people who are like, man, that's cool, I really want to learn that. And like, they're weird. Like some people,
4-part mallet stuff is
Yeah.
amazing.
it's cool. Yeah. Especially when people do it well. Like they play a silly song like the Flintstones theme or something. And you're like, yeah. Or like, I mean, for some of these kids these days, it's like AC/DC or something on mallets. What? Yeah. So you've done is piano and you studied drums. What else have you studied any other?
Well, I did flute in junior high and high school.
Yeah.
Then I studied pipe organ.
Right. And you're the principal organist at Messiah.
I am.
That's your official title? Is that?
Yes. Well, one of the official titles. Yeah.
Okay.
Music and worship coordinator and principal organist. And there's a number of other things that fall under that.
Fair enough. I mean, that's because you do everything from like at Messiah, you do the choirs, you do the worship teams and things like that.
Yeah, choirs, worship teams, handbells. I plan all the music for the services. I write parts for whatever kid wants to play their instrument in the band. So a number of times I've got weird stuff like, this Sunday I've got French horn, trombone, and trumpet, which is fine.
Yeah.
I've done big band arrangements of hymns, and
Okay.
sometimes you get, because it's church and you never know who you've got,
Right.
you write your own stuff because you can't buy it because nobody writes for that
Well, exactly.
assortment of instruments. So
Well, and I mean, for the most part, you're dealing with people who probably couldn't even think of their own part anyway. I mean, there's crazy people who like Dennis Rusinek in the big band. He doesn't care what you throw in front of him. He can just play stuff. You're like, okay, sure. You just play, I guess.
well, and a wide variety of levels too, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh,
I've
yeah.
got some people who've been playing for decades, and then I've got some that have been playing for 2 years. So
Yeah.
I have to write parts that have a wide variety of
Right.
levels.
With those worship teams then, like, make it sound like, is it mostly horns then? Or is it?
No,
Okay.
it's singers too.
Okay.
Singers and guitars and drums. It varies from Sunday to Sunday
Okay.
depending on who's home and who's there and who's available. And yes,
And who isn't hiding in their home these days from COVID? Yeah. So then that's kind of interesting because it's like a lot of times I think the most churches I've been, it's like guitar, bass, drums, singers, and that's it. But when you mention like French horns and things like that, that makes it interesting.
yes,
Yeah, especially when you have to transpose for all those instruments. And
yes. I've learned a lot, and they're great because I've taken one course in orchestration in university.
yeah,
So I'll just throw them stuff, and they're like, "That was great. Maybe switch this, or how about this?"
Yeah.
Or,
well,
it's
and
great
that's
learning.
I often ask, like, oh, what's the standard range you'd actually read in your, like for treble clef, your trumpet? Like, what's your standard range you're going to read? Like, does it make sense? Some instruments they're like reading above the staff all the time or below the staff, and you're like, I could never play that instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you're dealing with a beginner, you can't go to your orchestration book and say, "Oh, I've got this range," because
Yeah.
they've only looked at 5
Yeah.
notes.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you ever get recorder players that are like, I want to play in a worship team?
I haven't had recorder yet.
Ooh,
Not yet.
you should be glad about that.
Oh.
I was just thinking because limited range, because often it's like you learn like G, A, and B or something, and that's it. And then you're dealing with squeaks and squawks, and it's a fun instrument.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I've been pretty fortunate in the squeak and squawk.
Yeah.
department. Though I will not say his name. I had a guy who learned, he was great to work with, a guy who learned how to circular breathe on his trumpet. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
and they were a bit of clownsters. So during rehearsal, he just wouldn't take breaths. He'd just play the whole song in one breath with the circular breathing, just to tick me off, or like not tick me off, but like be goofy about it, right? Like, you
Well-
gotta breathe for everybody else.
Well, and yeah, I mean, if you're like, hey, look what I can do, and then it's like, oh, come on, there's like articulation you have to think about. There's like, don't just,
No, it's been very fun, and
yeah,
it's been fun to work with the students. There's a number of kids that have come through Messiah and are now professional musicians,
yeah,
and a lot of their training outside of the school and their private lessons was in Messiah.
yeah.
Um, so that's pretty fun to work with and see where they've gone. And then they come home and I'm like, you can come play for me now.
Oh man, those days. Well, when I'd play at some churches and be like, hey, what do you want to play this week? I'm like, oh, what do you need? Because I could do like drums, bass, guitar, whatever you want me to. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. And so you grew up, you grew up at Messiah, right? Like that was your home church and everything. So, and how involved were you there before your current thing? Like how involved with the choirs and everything like that?
Oh, I grew up in the choir system.
You grew up
I
in
went like, right from cherub choir all the way up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I did too. I always enjoyed, probably my favorite one there was going to like the junior high one. We'd walk after Charlie Kiln, walk over to the church, and Jane Christensen was yeah. I did everything under her too. It was like I did handbells. It's fun. Like all the opportunities you had at Messiah, you had a lot of those opportunities in music.
Yeah. And they definitely, looking back, I mean, they definitely shaped a lot of kids.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh.
And I mean, this is nothing against it. It's like there's a lot of kids who are now adults who have come back, and it's like, hey, you were at Messiah, and like you're a music person.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's really neat too, because I mean, I think this community offers, I think, a lot to artists and music people and stuff. So hopefully it continues over the next while. But yeah,
I was talking to, I can't remember who it was. Doesn't really matter. But we were saying there's a lot of professional musicians that have come out of Camrose. For the size of it, it's kind of crazy, the number of professional musicians.
Well, and I think there's just been so many opportunities. You have guys like Tom Spila. His music program was for a small town. He had quite a program. Like he did everything, like choirs, and he grew up like he advanced his knowledge as he went on too. Like he improved over time. It was what he did. It was crazy. His program was nuts. Like it's just, you look at it's, I mean, comparable to big cities and stuff, what he did as one guy.
Yeah. And the quality and you just look at the amount of times his groups won provincials, right? Like quality was astounding. And when I was in high school, we had a huge concert band, but we also had, he handpicked people out of there to make a wind ensemble, which was even a higher quality.
Yep.
And then there was chorus and jazz choir and 2 jazz bands.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guitar class, and then there was a choir class, and like it was full all the time. I pretty much lived in the band room.
Yeah, I was going between there and the drama room, so that was my jam. But no, I mean, like, and I think how many years had Kraz been running when you started with that group?
A few, but not too many.
I was
long, right? In that section where we won provincials for like 7 years in a row.
Yeah,
I was in that run.
Yeah, and it's interesting because some of those groups, like Kraz, was it strictly jazz at that time, or was it?
It was no, it was chamber choir and jazz.
Because I think eventually got separated too. It got separated. There was the jazz side, and there was the kind of the concert, and then there was the choir class choir. And man, I thinking of like picking music for all that stuff, I can't even.
And keeping it straight, I know.
And it just kept advancing, like you said. Wind ensemble, I played in that, but it would have been established for a bit. Kraz was going, once it got established, it just ran and evolved, and
well, and there was a lot of feed in from the Messiah choir program. So because we had started choir when we were 3, by the time we got to junior high, we were already singing 3-part stuff. By the time you get to high school, you're used to singing all that part stuff, away you go. And we learned music so fast because a lot of us were from the Messiah choir program.
Yeah, I mean, especially for guys, it helps to have a bit of training that way, because your voice is going to get down somewhere that it's going to feel awkward. And so you were, you were involved with like every music thing you could at the high school level? Everything you could, yeah. Because it was like, were you one of those people? I was one of those people, but where in between every set of a different group, you had to like run and change. Did you have to do that?
Yes. I was.
Because I remember that I was in everything but the grade 9 band because I couldn't be in that. So it was like every time you'd run from like the West Gym and go change and then grab your instrument and then like book it back and forth. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. And then they'd be holding, trying to like stall for those kids who had to run and change all the time. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the important thing too, is where in a community, if all of the community groups interact and are able to say, okay, you know this person who can help with this, and you have that interconnectivity with it. It's really important, and I think that's what can help, grow the musicianship of some of these kids. And hopefully, and this is me saying with the COVID thing, it's just like, I hope a lot of this continued. There's threats right now to band and choir programs, and it's brutal. So,
and they Brendan at Choir Alberta, who's also a cameras, has done a lot of research scientific research on what choir and singing does to a person, whether they're in school or out of the school, and it's amazing the impact it has on people, right? Both health wise and mentally, and like everything is. I think every school should have it.
I know.
It just makes your students way better.
Well, it expands your way of thinking in my brain, and you're thinking about math or you're thinking about whatever. And I mean, if you're a drummer, you might think about math a bit more than some other people. But in general, it changes your way of thinking. You're also engaging with something that's not objective, really. Like there's sounds, and you're like experiencing new things that are different. So it's, as I always talk about, like music is where you can ignore any bias, any sort of like conflict. You can just play music and just be there. And I think that is important, learning those skills. So then when you do get into a situation, you're sitting around a campfire or just singing in a group or something, it's just like, it's huge. Bringing those skills and just enjoying what's going on and feeling included too. I think that's part of it, is when you're trained, you know about what's going on. You don't want to be the person who shows up and everybody's like singing like amazing, and then you're the one who's like, I feel like I don't fit. So,
right.
Yeah. All right. So then let's go into after high school. What did you do after high school? You went to university?
I went to CLBI.
CLBI. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And got my Bachelor of Theological Studies, which is a 3-year degree.
Okay.
The third year would be liberal arts.
Right.
So it overlaps with my university degree.
Okay.
So yeah, and I was involved with music over there too. So the summer after my second year of CLBI, we were on the road for 4 months. There was 5 of us in a 12-seater van, and we toured. I was the music director of that. We toured the Prairie provinces. And for the first 2 months, we were in a different bed every single night in a different town doing concerts every single night. And then the second 2 months, we were in different places for a week doing vacation Bible schools or Bible camps.
Okay.
Huh. So I know the Prairie provinces really well. Every little town.
I mean, that's interesting. That's like the standard, like you're a university student, you're sharing your being an older person to younger people, which is cool. Like kids need to see that stuff, and especially these days. But yeah, that's cool. And so you did the touring, and then I went to Augustana. Okay. Yeah. And did my bachelor degree there. Okay. A bachelor in Bachelor of Arts. Yeah. They started their Bachelor of Music my last year there, and they wouldn't let me switch. So I have Bachelor of Arts with a music major. Lovely. That's But I mean, my major was piano performance, but I did my graduating recital for classical piano because I grew up doing classical mostly in my second year, and then I switched to jazz piano for my third and fourth, and then I had drumming on top of that. Okay. Who did you take drumming from? Darren Sallin. Okay. Because there was a different guy. I did it 2 years.
Trevor Brandenburg.
I did 2 years with him.
Yeah.
Um,
Darren had big drum and Camrose.
yeah. Okay. And he's like, when did he stop doing that? I just kind of.
A few years after Lucas Brown graduated.
Okay. I don't.
So it's been I would probably say 6 years since he's done that.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe more.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And so you did. That was your last year. How long did you study hand drumming then? Through Darren?
I can't remember if it started my first year of university or my second.
Okay.
Can't remember.
All right. So then you finished your program, and then did you go right away to go teaching in like Korea and stuff?
Yeah, for 2 years.
Yeah. And that was Korea, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
South Korea.
South Korea.
Yep.
We have to just distinguish that. Yeah.
Though, interesting, this has nothing to do with music. I lived in Oijangbukbu, which is, it kind of is like Washington, D.C., and then you've got all those, like, which is its own province and then or state, and then you've got all the suburbs around it, right, which is the rest of the state. Seoul is the same way. So Seoul is its own little entity, but the city is so big that it just kind of merges into all these suburbs around it.
Yeah.
So I lived in the province outside of Seoul, but you couldn't tell the difference anyways, right?
Right.
But it was on the northern part of Seoul, and close to my house, there was, if the North Koreans had continued their tunnel. Do you know about the tunnels? Do you know about the DMZ?
Yeah, I know about stuff, and I don't.
So it would have come up right next to my house.
Oh, jeez, man. No, as much I've had a lot of free time on my hands, since the studio shut down. So my reading and stuff has been into stuff like that. So the scary states that are going on of different countries.
I've been in the tunnel, so I was in the DMZ and I went into one of the tunnels. They're huge.
Oh.
You can move tanks through them.
Jeez.
And the amount of soldiers that you can go through on foot at one time is like ridiculous. Yeah.
Sheesh. Man. That's always a weird, like that. I don't even know. That part of the world's just strange to me. Like that, you were there though. Like that's.
I know. And okay, so here's another funny. I mean, growing up in rural Alberta, with nothing happening, maybe the occasional tornado, right? That's about it.
Yeah.
And then moving to Seoul, and it was American occupied.
Yeah.
Right, because it's a strategic peninsula. And there's army bases all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And so the outside my house was the railway line, and there's tanks and trucks going on there all the time. But the one day I'm going to school, so that's all this, you go on the subway and there's American soldiers in uniform all over the place, right? But the one day I'm walking to school, I'm walking across the bridge, and all of a sudden there's shots, and I almost hit the deck. I was like, what is going on? But there was a shooting range, I found out, for one of the camps very close to my place. But it's just, you don't know any of that growing up here. You're not exposed to it at all. And by the time I was done my 2 years, I was like, man, whatever. Like, I didn't even hear it, right? And the tanks going by, you're just like, oh yeah, that's regular everyday life. It's amazing how fast we adapt.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's something you'd have to do, especially if you're staying there. But yeah, I always say that it's like until you like travel the place, you don't really know what's there, and that's interesting. I always thought it would be strange especially when you have like a neighbor that is kind of essentially hostile, right? Like you don't know, that'd be weird. That's just a strange type of life. They have to keep living in South, but it's like, man, it's strange. It's just some of these things that I'm reading about too with like China and stuff. I'm just like, this is weird. I'm scared, but I don't want to think about, because it's rural Alberta again, right? Like there's crazy stuff. Yeah, that's interesting. So you taught there for how long?
Just under 2 years.
2 years, okay.
Yeah.
And that was, you're teaching English? Was that?
I was teaching English, and then I started teaching piano.
Okay. And so we've talked about this, but like, I wanted to get into this too. How were lessons taught differently than they are here?
So over here, you come to your studio, or you come to your teacher's studio once a week for your lesson. You go home and you're expected to practice and have an instrument at home. And in Korea, generally the teacher sets up a studio with a number of different rooms with different instruments in it. And the students come there every day for their practice time. And you just go around to the different rooms and tweak things as you go. So you don't spend half an hour, 45 minutes, or 1 hour with one student. Right. You're just constantly on the move with different students. In Korea, Galapagos is slightly different again, because I taught in Galapagos for a few weeks on a volunteer thing a couple years ago. And I was on San Cristobal, which is where the capital is, stinking small island. And the kids would come every day, but they weren't in different rooms. They were all in one room. Okay. And they all had little keyboards, which weren't even full size. And some of them you had to, you had to hold the power cord at the right angle for it to work. Like it was just a gong show. And all the kids were practicing different pieces at the same time. And I had like 10 or 12 of them in one room. And I'm supposed to help them. And they don't speak English. They speak Spanish. And my Spanish was like this at the time. And they had to practice their one song. So the kids were supposed to come and practice for an hour every day. And this was like 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds. It didn't matter what age, right? And they had to perfect the one piece before they could go on. So they would be practicing one piece or maybe two for an hour. Okay. So what I heard was no puedo, which is I don't want to, I can't. Don't make me, like that kind of stuff. Like, please, teacher, no more.
Well, I was going to ask, like, how well do they, in both like Korea and Galapagos, how do they participate in those lessons? Because like,
it's great for the one-on-one. Like you can correct things really fast, right? So you don't have a week for things to go downhill on if they get on a wrong track.
And is there a lot of discipline to that then? Like when they're in their room, they're just like focused.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I found I had to do a lot of changing in how I taught from what I was used to teaching, right? Because you're going to see the kid the next day, and so you work differently.
Well, it's like you're not going to do like the lesson to prepare. Okay, this is what you should work on the whole week until next time. It's like you can't really think that way because
it's like let's work on this, and now you practice this while I go work with this student, and then I'll come back and double check it, and then we'll go on the next thing. So there's definitely pros and cons for both things. I think the kids practice better when they're with you. Yeah. Because they come and they're like, okay, this is my practice time, and my teacher's there, and she can hear what's going on.
Well, and honestly, that's part of the importance, I think, with having, you can learn from a video online or something, but it's like the teacher is there to correct you, and it's like you're holding that wrong or your fingerings are wrong. It's like, no, fix this. Like a video's not going to be able to yell at you. I don't yell, I just make fun of people. And kids don't get that anyway. So, but I think I'd kind of like that in the sense of like going from a room where it's like, okay, work on this passage and then I'll be back in whatever amount of time, go to the next one. Like that's almost
it can be more productive on one hand.
Yeah. Right. If you have the right student, I guess. But,
exactly. Yeah. With the Galapagos, I would have switched it so the kids, especially the younger kids, were practicing for less time because they're at 8 years old. Practicing for an hour on the same piece is a little intense.
An hour, that would be. I've had I sometimes have 5-year-olds that you do ukulele or whatever, and man, 20 minutes is like their cutoff point.
Oh yeah, because their attention span is just not there, right? Yeah. So to try and keep that attention span and keep the interest there, because I don't want them to hate it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, that's the big thing. Yeah. Well, and as long as how involved were the parents with that sort of thing too? Not at all.
Not
just like here's my kids, and then have fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Korea, Korea, the whole education system is very different from here.
Yeah.
But the kids would come, they would have little buses that would take them to their hagwons, which were school after school.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so our kids come home and go on video games, or they might go and do some activities.
Yeah.
These go to more school. They'd go to math school. They'd go to English school. They'd go to music school. That's all you do is just school. So they would have little buses that would take them where they needed to go. The parents didn't see them till the end of the day, generally speaking.
Yeah.
The Galapagos kids, at least on that island. You can walk everywhere there, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I think they just came from school, because school in the Galapagos gets out at about noonish, 1 o'clock.
Okay.
And then they would just come.
And the kids just show up, and you're like, cool.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's what I liked about that is when you have parents who don't have any musical background and can't help their kid at home or have trouble helping their kid at home, then the teacher's there to help more, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I saw more improvement that way. When you have kids that have musical parents and can help at home through the week, that it kind of evens the playing field out.
Right. No, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's all, and one thing I find about at least Western culture, it seems like you said, like video games and stuff, there's too many distractions. So even the parents are just like, do something. Sometimes the student comes for the lesson and that's all they do for the week. And you're like, well, we're not going anywhere with this lesson.
I know. You do need to practice in between in order to get better.
Yeah. Yeah. And even, I sometimes say, like, even if they're confused, like, just try. If something happens in between the week now, like, I often try to get the parents engaged, but it's like, just try. If you're making mistakes, we'll deal with it in your next lesson. Like, just try if you're confused. Like, if you find you get home and you're like, I don't remember anything. Yeah, I'm just like, just try. Play your instruments. That's more important than just, like, not playing it. Like, just pick up your instrument. Even if you're not, sometimes it's like, I gave you something to work on. If you're not going to do that, just pick up your instrument and noodle around. Like, play with it.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like, you might learn more that way than what I'm doing sometimes. Or might actually find something you enjoy to do. And then we can go from there. Because, yeah, it's important to sit at your instrument, play it. That's it.
Yes.
Because I think you talked about a while ago that you had a pretty regimented practice cycle, right? Do you still have that?
Yes.
It's a question.
Okay, so growing up in the Olson household, there was 4 of us on the piano, right? Because Mom was playing all the time too.
Yeah.
So, and we delivered papers in the morning. So we had a very structured morning. We got up and Lael and I were out doing papers. Kiva was on the piano. We'd come home. Lael get on the piano. I'd get ready for school. I'd get on the piano. She'd get ready for school. We all had breakfast together. I'd get back on the piano. They'd go to school. Like, it was just because you had to get all your practice time in, right?
Yeah.
And then when I was at Bible school, I was practicing 4 hours a day. So I'd get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, practice for 2 hours before my 8 o'clock class started, then practice for 2 hours after classes finished before I went and taught or did productions or whatever. So I guess I'm not getting up at 5 o'clock now because now I'm a working musician and I'm generally not home until, 11 or 12 or whatever at night, or normally. And
5 o'clock would probably be really,
exactly. Yeah. But because I'm constantly getting ready for gigs, I'm constantly practicing.
Yeah. Well,
it just might be different than.
Well, and that's kind of what when you have something to practice for, you're practicing those parts, right? But I'm just thinking, like, before that, you're practicing your skills, your technique or something instead. But when you are like, okay, I'm working towards this gig or this event, I'm going to practice these parts over and over. And I found after everything got shut down, because I was supposed to play that weekend, things got closed down. I was playing a Dixieland show with some of the big band guys, just a smaller group of us. And then another thing on the next day. And it's like, I had all this stuff I'd been practicing, and now it was like, oh, I guess I'm not practicing for anything for a long time now. So it's like having to figure out how to practice again, I guess, is what I've been trying to do.
And it leaves really fast if you don't practice it. Yep. It's amazing. Well, I guess it's the same as working out, right? What did my sister, Lael's a nurse, and she told me how much muscle mass you lose every day that you lay in bed. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. And I can't remember the amount. But the same with practicing. You don't practice, boom. Then you get back and you're like, oh man.
Well, and the physical part of it, my right hand for playing double bass, I played, how long ago? Maybe a month ago now, at Stephen Olson and his brother out at their barn. And man, my hand hurt after. It hurt so much. And then drum wise, when I picked up my sticks after a few weeks after being shut down, It was like my fingers were burning so much, like parts of where my fulcrum sits, and it was just, yeah, it was just crazy. And that now it's like I'm trying to keep in practice with those, but it's the physical toll that it takes if you haven't been working out is brutal.
Yes.
Like you say though, if it's like even lifting weights, you're like, if you haven't lifted something for a long time and you go to lift it, you're like, ow, this doesn't work anymore. So yeah. And then, but it is one of those things when you have it though, you'll eventually work it back. It takes some dedication to get it back to where it was.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's one advantage to musical skills is that muscle memory tends to get back to where it needs to be. Like your fingerings and everything, you'll find they work. It's just sometimes you're like, oh, I'm so rusty. My hands hurt. Yeah. So.
Well, and that's what I've noticed with some of my parents who took piano when they were little and now their kids are in it, right? And they got into careers and they weren't doing it, but now their kids are in it and they're like helping their kids at home. And I've been watching them and they've got nice hand position. Yeah. And they're like, oh, here's my C major scale. Away we go. And I was like, oh, good for you. It's like, it's stuck back there somewhere, right?
Yeah. And guitar players, it's like they know their chords still or something. You're like, okay, cool. You played guitar, didn't you? And it's like, yeah, but and it's like, okay. Yeah, but that's the interesting with practicing too. It's just that like, cause the regiment of it, and then I don't know. It's how would you keep yourself engaged in a practice like that? Like when you're going like say an hour block or 2 hour blocks. Like how do you keep yourself focused?
Well, when your piece takes, 25, 30 minutes to play through, that time goes really fast, right? If you're just playing through it, right? Like grade 10 piano sonatas take forever to play.
Yeah, totally.
But I think as I've aged or grown, I don't know. I do not mind sitting down and doing 10 minutes, 20 minutes of scales.
Okay.
Because I can just rip through. I can go from one key to the next key to the next key, or go through my modes without stopping. And now it's a mind game, right? Yeah. Because your brain is like, okay, what can I do next without stopping? Or I play them in like fourths or thirds, or like different ways of doing things instead of here's my scale and I must do stuff, right? So I think it's coming up with different ways of creating interest for yourself. Right. So I was also the child that if I, like for disciplining, to put me in a room in a corner, I'd been like, sweet, because I can come up with a whole bunch of different things, right? That would not have been punishment for me. I entertain myself quite easily. And so I find I just come up with games when I'm practicing. Let's try this, right? Whereas some other personalities might find that a little bit harder. I know with my kids, my students, the extroverts have a harder time practicing than the introverts. So then, because they want to be with people, and it's practicing is more of an introverted thing. You're by yourself, right? Unless and even if you play in groups, you still have to do some practicing by yourself. So then if I get that, if they've got something to look forward to that they know they're going to be with people, they're more likely to practice. Same with me, generally. Or if they've got like a track to practice with or something like that, then they're like, oh, this is cool.
Well, and one thing I've been doing just more recently, just to practice soloing, is I'll record a bunch of tracks and layer them and then just do my soloing over top of that.
Exactly.
So, but it is one of practice. I consider it's like you're practicing your skills, and then whatever you're practicing, whether it's you are reading a song or something, then you bring it to your rehearsals, you bring it to other places. But it's like you have your own work you have to do, and sometimes it's not as fun as other things.
No, and sometimes there's some hard slogging through stuff, but there's also, I think, as you go through more of that slogging through, and then you see the results on the other end, then later on, you're like, okay, I put the work in. Yeah. I can see the results, and I know that those are going to be.
Well, and sometimes you can hear the results too. I find like often with some of my guitar students, they'd be like, "Oh, I can play the song," and then I listen to them like, "There's things we're going to work on a bit, like articulation and like make sure your hammer-ons are solid or something." And you'll hear the difference, like how the line plays, and it isn't just notes. There's actually something to it. Yeah.
Well, and it's hearing music. What do I call it? I call it hearing music or seeing music in 3D instead of 2D.
Yeah.
So 2D is just playing what's on the page.
Yeah.
3D is playing and hearing what's not on the page, and it takes on a life of its own, right? So when I'm teaching my students, we talk a lot about that part, so they start to hear differently and start to see the music in their head.
Yeah, no, and
Just
that's what I talk about with some of my students is, like, once you've practiced a piece, like if it's sheet music, you kind of have it memorized a bit, then you don't have to focus what's on the sheet. You can kind of play the notes and listen to what you're playing and understand, oh, I am playing it right or wrong, or like you'll be able to hear, hopefully, if you have like the ear to hear things properly. I still feel bad for some people when there's somebody I was talking to the other day, they played cello but they couldn't really sing, so their intonation, I guess, took for a long, like, it was painful for them to get used to it.
Right.
So but yeah, it's music. It isn't just reading something. There's actual flow. There's
taking it off the page.
Yeah. I don't think a composer intended it to be just dots on a page.
No. I think going back to that practice thing,
Yep.
I practice differently now than I did when I was little. I've learned tricks to get through stuff faster too, right? Learn those hard parts quicker.
That makes sense. Totally. And just as a reference, my sister's watching, she says, Melanie. So great to see you, Tova. So she's watching, apparently. So yeah, anyhow, yeah, with that though, it's practice is developing those techniques of just keeping yourself focused. I don't know how, that's a crazy thing. Because I find I'll do the tricks. Like I have a scale, or I'll do like a, say like C major scale, then I'll play the triads through it, and then I'll play like in all the, like for every step, and then I'll play, the I don't know, I'll play the, I don't know, just different intervals and things like that through the scales on guitar. So it's like multi-octave. But I can't do that for too long, or else I just get distracted.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's this misnomer out there that you have to sit and practice for your whole thing at one section.
Yeah.
And you don't.
Yeah.
Like, and especially if I find if you've got something that's really hard, practice it really intense for like a short time. Go away and do something else. Come back, do it again, whatever, right?
Yep.
Because then you don't lose that attention, and it's actually better on your body too.
Well, and I also sometimes, if you walk away and you come back later, you might play it like instantly, and you're like, okay, cool. Like you just didn't. You were maybe just anger or emotions were getting away, and it's just all of a sudden your fingers are working properly. I'm like, fine, I guess that's all I needed. Take the walk away, go run outside for a bit, and then come back. Yeah. So, and these days, let's talk about some of the things, activities well, some of them you might not be able to do right now. But let's talk about what are you currently involved with, like with the Kokopelli Choir group? What have you been doing with them?
The last couple of years I've been doing solely the accompanying and percussion for Shumaela, which is the junior high choir, which is always fun because it's that junior high crazy stage. And so we've got the changing voices. We keep the guys singing through their voice change, which is always fun. Sometimes you're like, oh, this week you've got this note. Great. Next week we might have a different note.
Yeah.
Which is challenging because there's not a lot of music out there for it's the kids are singing at a higher level than a lot of junior high choirs, and so to find something challenging, but also to find something in that baritone range of like maybe 5 notes.
Yeah.
So the director and I write a lot of music for them.
Okay.
Or arrange a lot of music. So I'm doing a lot of that. I used to do percussion, be the percussion coach for the whole Kokopelli Association. But yeah, it's because things in cameras have kind of exploded. I backed out and am just involved with Shumaela.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. And how big is that group right now?
Shumaela is 50.
50. Okay.
Yeah. 50 junior high kids, and we take them touring internationally. We were in Germany last year.
Oh, okay.
No. Germany 2 years ago. New York last year. We took 50 kids to New York.
50 junior high kids to
50, yes. Yeah, and they were great. Yeah.
That's good.
We got them trained well.
And so that group meets in Edmonton then? Like that's where you rehearse for that? Okay. And you were accompanying Kokopelli, like the main choir before?
Yeah. Yes.
Who's currently directing that one? The main, is it Scott still? Okay. And you are the worship and music coordinator at Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
And how like you're talking about is that a pretty hardcore full time, like that's your main gig?
I would okay. My main gig, like time wise, would be Messiah and my studio,
Okay.
and then the other stuff is the filler in between.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And the studio, is that strictly through Augustana then?
No,
No?
I have my own studio.
Okay.
And then I teach a couple courses at Augustana.
Okay. And where do you teach? Where's your studio? Is it?
Up in the balcony of Messiah,
Okay. Fair enough.
where they used to have the string program.
Wait, the balcony? Oh, like I know what you're talking about now. I know, like it's
Like
like
got this huge bank of windows to the east.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
gorgeous. Yeah.
Okay.
And it has enough room for all of my instruments because I might have a problem.
You can look back. This is
Exactly.
like half of my stuff.
I know. That's a problem. Yes.
And I'm looking at things like xylophones and stuff eventually, but I don't know where I'm gonna fit that. And
I
so,
have a one. Yeah.
man, I might just go for a few of the smaller ones, like 2 octaves or something. Cause it's like, no. And Melanie says, Tova, I should probably say it's Melanie Jill Music Lessons and Counseling is the username. Tova, you have had so many rich music experiences. Students would be so fortunate to have you as their teacher. You have some great practicing tips that I'm going to try.
Oh,
there
awesome.
You go. So that's you Messiah, what else you're involved in? You were involved with the drama. You were involved with About Time Productions, right?
Yeah, I've been the music director for, oh, good heavens. We figured this out just when we finished this season. And I was like, what? Because time goes pretty fast.
Yeah.
I've done quite a number of shows with them.
Right.
Yeah, so for the first number of shows that I did, we were doing a live band. So I taught the kids their music and I prepped the live band.
Okay.
Now we're doing soundtracks because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
But I teach the kids all their music and all that stuff.
Okay.
We, depending on the year, we have one production with 8 to 18-year-olds, or we have 2 productions, one with the older kids and one with the younger kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are they done now though? Like I heard.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And so there is a new production. That's not the right word. A new drama troupe starting in the fall.
Okay.
That will be similar in the ideology, like of ATP.
Okay. And you're involved with the music there then?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yes. There is something crazy. Yeah, drama kids are a breed unto themselves. The first drama rehearsal I did with my kids, I was like, what did I get into?
Yeah, no.
They just stand there and sing. They bounce off the walls.
I had the choice of drama or music, and I was looking at going to university, and I went with music because Mark half so convinced me. But and I'm like, I'm kind of glad I did, because the drama kids, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm a drama kid, but I'm not that kind of drama kid.
But it's interesting. Like the more drama I do, and the more I've had to work with the drama kids and see that side. I mean, I grew up doing drama with your mother.
Yeah.
In some of her productions, but I take that back to my music kids.
Yeah.
And we look at music very differently. And I will take some of the techniques that I do, because trying to do an hour, like I have an hour and a half music rehearsal with them. Drama kids don't sit still for an hour and a half. They don't sit still for 5 minutes. So I have to think of ways to teach them so that they are constantly moving and doing all those.
Yeah.
I mean, well, when you get on the stage, you've got singing, acting, and choreography. You're doing like triple threat stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I end up pulling in a lot of those things into my music studio too. And I found that it actually works better because they embody things and they start to hear the music differently because they see the story behind it.
Well, and I also, one thing that used to help me back in the day. I'm not in. If I put a character on, I felt I sang like that character a bit more. Like if I knew how I was supposed to sing. So if I'm supposed to sing like a boisterous bass voice, I'd have this like. Right now I'm in bass voice, but it's like I'd sing a specific way. I'd put a character on, so I wouldn't be as nervous either, because that's just part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or even articulation. Like if I get my drama kids to act out the articulation that I want them to sing as they're singing it.
Yeah.
They pick up articulation and style like that, because it's in their body, right?
Well, that's always the interesting thing when it comes to organizations, where it is like it's a multiple thing. Like sometimes a choir, you think like sing, that's all you do, but there is definitely like that need for animation and being aware of what you look like. Sometimes I think is a big thing too. Talking to, I'll do this with music students too. But it's like look at how you're playing your instrument. Like even when you're singing, when you're speaking, look at your face. What is on your face, and that
or what's not on your face.
Exactly. Like some people, I find it hard to watch them sing, and other people, it's like, yeah, they look like they're comfortable. They look like, but some people are hard to watch sing. And so if you're aware of what you look like, you won't be self-conscious. And you have that ease about you. If you're a drama person, you use your hands a lot, apparently. So to guide whatever conversation's going on. But yeah, and I think it's an important thing. It's drama people who are in musicals have the kind of the reverse challenge. Like you have to sing, congratulations, and it's like good luck, especially junior high sometimes.
Oh yeah. And I'm last year we didn't have we were lucky this year. Last year we had one of the more prominent characters go through voice change right around showtime.
Lovely.
You do it, right?
Just like,
and if you've got backup singers, you can't just keep dropping the song, because the backup singers will then not have notes to sing because it's out of their range.
Just dub it or something. Just dub it over. It would work. So if anyone's watching right now, if you have some questions, now's the time, because we're getting low on time and I can ask Tova some questions. Otherwise, just going to keep going for a bit, and then that'll be it. So, the other thing is, we play in this together. We play with Battle River Big Band, right?
Yeah.
That's the other. I shouldn't say that's the other thing, because do you play with any other groups other than that?
I do a lot of gigging. I guess Battle River Big Band would be the gig that happens every week. The other one.
Yeah. It's the regular one, right? Like, yeah, it's like those times you get, can you play for this? It's like, okay. And then you just go. It's not an official group or anything. It's just like, you just show up and do your job. Yeah, no, they're the official group that we were meeting with. When was the last time we met? We had the meeting, but that would it have been like November?
I think we did a January, February show or something like that, and that was about it.
We didn't even do January, February. It would have been like November, I think, was the Christmas show. I think November was the Christmas show. That was it.
Last one.
That was the last one, I think. And we've done, I think we did maybe a meeting after that or something in person, but then after that it was just, we had a Zoom meeting back in, what month is it right now? Maybe April or May. But yeah, you play piano with them. And I play bass, and we're in the rhythm section with Tom Spila and Tyson, who
is gone.
Yeah. So we don't know what's happening with men anyway. But I always, how did you get involved with that group anyway?
The piano player that was playing left, and Dennis asked me, because I had Deanna and I had a trio which kind of morphed into a quintet of female singers that we were writing music for, and we did a number of jazz shows, and I had written parts for a small big band behind us, and Dennis had been part of that, and so and he also taught at Augustana, and I accompanied for his studio, so we had the connection there.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, that's how I got into that.
Nice.
And I was like, well, I got choir on Thursday night, so if I can come late. He was like, yep.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, I would teach until like 7:30, so I'm like, actually 8 at one point, but then I'd kind of move students around a bit. But yeah, it's a fun group. It's kind of disappointing that they're not going, because it was just like my extra, like, hey, let's go play with other people. It was fun. because I haven't done choirs for, I don't even remember the last time I've been in a choir. I'm going to say 2004. That's my...
Ooh, you got the choir.
I'm just going to put that date out there. But yeah, like the big band, I played with the community band, but the big band, I like the style of music. Like I love that kind of big band stuff. I mean, I'd love to be on drums for that, but it's fun to be in that group. They're fun guys. And the weirdest thing about being a cameras person is just like my high school band teacher and on my other side is my junior high band teacher. So it's like,
I know.
okie dokie. So.
And what do I call them?
Well, and that took me forever to be like, hey, Tom. Yeah. Oh, it's a fun group because it is like all these people, you kind of know them. I don't know the task people. I've gotten to know the tasking people now, but it's just kind of fun to hang out with them. And some crazy talent in there too. I don't know.
It's not just show up and play.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a bit of community to it for some of it.
Yep.
Sometimes it's like, can we just show up and play sometimes? I just want to get through a bit more. Let's balance this a bit better. But yeah, it's a fun group. And what you said when was this quintet thing? How long ago was that?
I think it stopped maybe 4 years ago.
Okay, because that was, I'm gonna say, you. Was Jayla Brewer at the time?
She was in it for a little bit. Michelle was in it for a little bit. It started with me and Deanna and Michelle, and if anybody's a English teacher, I just said that in the wrong order. And then Michelle Kennedy Hawkins.
Yeah.
And then Michelle left, and it ended up being Jayla and my mother and Charlene Brown.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And that was just straight, like that was a cappella with some backing mainly? Or? Yeah,
a lot of a cappella stuff. And then once a year, I guess we would do stuff with like a more jazzy kind of show with either a combo or a small, big band.
Okay. No, fair enough. Yeah, that's cool. And the last thing I want to ask you before we close out, I just want to ask about your music. Like, what kind of music do you enjoy the most? There's your big question. Jazz?
Because I was the child that got in trouble all the time from my piano teachers because I would come back and rewrite it. And like balk anything. And they were like, no, you need to play what's on the page. I'm like, why? Mine sounds better. So I like jazz. It's got, especially Latin jazz.
Okay.
It's got all those different rhythms that you pile up. And so you got polyrhythms. But I don't have to stick with what's on the page.
Well, and I mean, that's from your that's your Afro-Cuban stuff though, right? Too, like that's the, so like, and you'd say like, do you have any specific writers, artists within jazz? Like, no, just anything, like give me a bossa nova or a.
Yep. It's more I want to layer rhythms and I want to be able to be in the moment and create instead of I have to play what's on the page every single time and it has to sound the same. I can do that. I'm fine with that. But my happy place is let's just
see, and that's I actually, as much as I like having some indicator of like measure numbers or whatever, it's like I'd rather just play, like give me chord changes or something and let's do it. Like that's I'd be happy with that. That's my kind of thing.
Create on the spot.
Yeah, because often I find, especially some of the big band stuff, it's like walking quarter notes. I'm like. And it's weird, some of the walks that they show, it's like, you're not a bass player, are you? Some of the weird walks that go out of like, this doesn't make sense. So it's like, definitely, I do get that. Like, especially drums too. Drums, you just sit back and play some of the crazy rhythms you want and then go from there. But I do understand, like piano in the big band is kind of weird too, isn't it? Where it's
just a lot of boom check.
Yeah.
I can sight read 99.9% of the stuff that we get in there.
Yeah, so it's you're not going to get the most interesting stuff because they are like what, grade 1 or 2 levels, but
yeah.
Let's boost.
I don't know. You weren't in there yet. We did a couple pieces where like it was a piano solo piece,
right? Okay.
And a massive big crazy solo in it.
Yeah.
That I practiced. That was fun. That was crazy. It was a Latin piece.
You're like,
Yeah.
if this is swing, I'm not going to do it. But it's Latin. I'm fine. Let's do this. And one argument I have to say with Latin music, though, I always hate it when they just say Latin. And if you don't know the song, you're like, what kind of Latin is this?
I know.
Give me the...
so
It makes me angry because it's like, I guess I'll just start with a bossa and then change if I need to. Yeah, it's the worst. I hate that. Like if you're into rhythm, you're just like, what is this? This isn't... makes me angry. People should listen to bossa. Like, who's some... I can't remember names. Give me some names for like some big time bossa composers. And then people should listen to it. Tito Puente has some he's crazy crackers, and I love him. Some of his stuff is crazy. Who else is there?
I would love to go and study down in like the Latin countries, Latin America, and do some music study down there, because there's so slight different changes in how they feel things, and we tend to be so North American when we play.
I think you're going to need to define that for people watching. What does we're North American when we play mean? Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, definitely. There's a rigidness to a lot of things, and sometimes that's where the being stuck in sheet music versus just letting stuff go is like where you need to be. So, anyhow, that's all we're gonna do for today. That's. Do you have anything you want to say before we close out?
No.
Nothing? Okay. So thanks, Tova, for doing this again. And hopefully people learned a bit about who you are. And this video will be up on YouTube for a bit. So you can check it out if you missed it, of course. I mean, they might, if people caught bits of it, it'll be up. So if you want to rewatch it too yourself, you can see what you said and see if something went wrong. So that's all for today. I'm going to just let people know that the sun is kind of shining. You can go out and do that. If you want to check out more videos, I have this Sunday, I'm releasing my last video for the season. I'm going to call it season 1 of the ABCs of Music for G, so you don't have to figure out what letter that is. There'll be another series coming up with that, and I'll be talking about that probably in that video. Otherwise, that is it for today. Again, thanks, Tova, and I'll see everybody next week if you go to my Facebook page, I'll be announcing who's on next week. So I think I know who's coming, but I have to double check with them first before I say anything right now. Anyhow, see everybody next time. And I'm just going to mute for a bit, and then we'll be back.